Here's all the evidence I have right here. Zoom in, I suppose you want to. Nothing. I've seen nothing. I have nothing.
Breaking news tonight, that is Luigi Mangioni's new defense lawyer who had a lot to say to reporters, but he hasn't seen any evidence showing his client is the shooter. I'm Gadi Schwartz. This is Stay Tuned Now. Tonight, we're starting with the arrest of the murder suspect that everyone seems to be talking about, the 26-year-old Ivy League-educated computer engineer now officially charged in what was basically the assassination of a health insurance CEO. And here's what happened to him when he was about to be led in court. Now, it's hard to make out what he says there, but our crew on the ground heard it better in person, and it sounds like he yelled completely out of touch and an insult to the intelligence of the American people and their lived experience. Listen to it again.
And completely out of touch and an insult to the intelligence of the American people and their lived experience.
So what exactly is he talking about there? What does he mean? We're going to get into all of that in just a second. But first, let's talk a little bit more about the extradition hearing today. He sat alone for several minutes before things got started. And when they did, Mangioni chose to fight extradition to New York. That move could keep him in a Pennsylvania jail for weeks. His lawyer says he's going to plead not guilty to charges in Pennsylvania and is expected to do the same here in New York. That lawyer also had a lot of other things to say. Take a listen.
The fundamental concept of American justice is a presumption of innocence, and until you're proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and I've seen zero evidence at this point. I don't know where you all are from, but I still see people wearing masks. They say numerous masks. A lot of times when you buy masks, you got to buy them. You know, they don't. I guess you can buy them individually, but every time I bought them, they come in boxes. So I don't know. All I can tell you is that's not a crime. I haven't seen anything. I have not seen one scintilla, one speck, one drop of any evidence yet.
What happened in court when you told him to keep quiet?
He shut his mouth, which is good. That's what he needs to do.
What are his feelings right now?
Well,
he seems outspoken.
Well, all I can, well, you know, he's obvious. You know, I said earlier, use your common sense. If you put yourself in, you or a loved one in that position, it's, you know, natural, I think, to go through many emotional stages. As far as him not talking, as long as I'm going to be the lawyer, I'm going to do all the talking.
NBC's George Solis joins us now. George, I mean, so much to break down here. Let's start with what he was yelling about this morning. What can you tell us about what he meant?
Yeah, we just heard from the defense attorney there, Tom Dickey, saying that he hoped that was the last outburst from his client. Again, it was a pretty volatile moment. He seemed ready and prepared to say something to the camera, as Mangioni did when he arrived at the Blair County Courthouse. Again, saying something to the effect of they had it coming or something along, you know, insult to the American people. It was sort of a rant. And then you saw him sort of buck there with the officers before getting pushed up against the wall. Then you had the hearing take place. That was pretty standard. And then they kept him inside of that courthouse, Gadi, for a relative long time, about 3 hours by our count. And this was the same courthouse where he made that first appearance last night, where he was actually read those charges that he's wanted for here in Pennsylvania, the 3 misdemeanors and the 2 felonies. And again, he was fairly quiet during those proceedings. It wasn't until after he was denied bail, the DA announcing that he was denied bail, that he had another outburst saying he took issue with some of those claims that he had money in a bag that they found him with, as well as that he had a high level of sophistication because of a bag that he had that is known to block RFIDs. He said, I don't know where that money came from, and saying that the level of sophistication isn't there just because it's simply a waterproof bag. Gadi.
Was that when the shushing happened? I understand that, like, there was a point today when the lawyer shushed him and told him to be quiet. What happened there?
Yeah, so if you obviously saw that interaction there from that presser earlier today, he's basically just telling him, listen, he's looking forward to working with him, is what the attorney told us, but he's also advising his client to be smart. You know, he cited a lot of attorney-client privilege. There was a lot he wouldn't delve into about his interaction with his client today. As you heard, he said at this point he hasn't seen any of the evidence, but he's going to encourage his client to plead not guilty to the charges here in Pennsylvania. And of course, we're now awaiting when that extradition, that governor's warrant, will be signed to begin those extradition proceedings. That is a process that could take several weeks, Gadi. So this could play out here in these courts a little while longer.
Yeah, meanwhile, we're also learning a lot more about how the arrest went down. In fact, I think we talked to one of the customers at the McDonald's in Altoona yesterday. Here's what he had to say.
A guy came in the door, and I didn't really look at him. I thought everyone was kidding around. The one guy said, "That looks like the shooter from New York." He was probably 10 feet away from me then with his back to me. But I'm sure he probably heard us.
A pretty remarkable interview there. So walk us through what happened after they recognized him and police got there.
Yeah, so according to authorities, how this all played out was, so he was at the McDonald's. A customer there saw him eating, thought he recognized him, alerted an employee at the McDonald's who scoped it out, called the authorities. They are there within minutes. Thus begins that interaction where, again, that rookie, that 6-month rookie here in Altoona, approached him, asked him to identify himself, asked him if he'd been in New York. That's when he started to visibly shake, presented a false ID. Again, they start looking through some of the bag. They see all of those fake IDs, including that ID that he presented at that hostel in Manhattan. And that's where this investigation starts to unfold. They bring him back to the precinct, begin the questioning, and then you have the series of events that play out after the fact, including the first appearance yesterday, and again, everything that we saw unfold today. I will tell you, Gadi, that speaking with the officials here in Altoona at the police department, they've been telling us their officers have been receiving threats. Members of this community have also been receiving threats. The DA telling us they are investigating those claims quite thoroughly, but of course, they are just waiting to see when this extradition takes place, because nothing like this, obviously, has happened here in the city of Altoona recently, Gadi.
Yeah, there's a very bizarre side to all of this investigation. We're going to get into that in just a bit. But George Solis reporting tonight from Pennsylvania. George, thank you. Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Angela Cinnadella. Angela, Mangione's lawyer is saying, there is zero evidence. I have seen no evidence connecting my client to this crime over and over and over again. And yet, ghost gun, they found him with a manifesto. They found him with clothing. They found him with a silencer. Is that something that lawyers have to say, or what's he getting at here?
Okay, so they don't have to say it. They definitely don't. But I've decided here, I think it's his legal strategy, and that is because he has very limited options in fighting this extradition. The only one he has at this point is a habeas corpus petition, which is this large, just constitutional thing where you're saying there is no way that my client can be detained based on the charges that are given. So I decided I think he has to lay this groundwork to at least pretend like there is no evidence whatsoever. And that is what he's going to argue in this petition. It's his only shot.
Bigger question, why fight extradition? Obviously, the big crime that everybody's talking about, and the most concerning one, happened here in New York. The governors are going to be working together. Yeah. Is this delaying the inevitable?
Yeah, so you're right. There's really no hope here. So it is a hopeless move, but it's strategic. And my guess is that, look, many criminals, they might meticulously plan out their crime, but they don't always plan out their legal strategy. So perhaps he needs time to find great legal representation in New York or figure out what he wants to do. At this point, New York prosecutors are less likely to come after him if he's in custody in Pennsylvania. So he is able to buy a little more time there. It's just strategic. There is no world in which he won't be extradited to New York State, given the priorities.
And you said possible shopping for a lawyer. Is this lawyer not going to be his lawyer all the way through? How do you see this going?
Well, first of all, he's apparently not barred in New York State, which means he can. But, he could be co-counsel in a way from there if there were a New York State lawyer who were willing to work with him. But my guess is he's going to attempt to find someone who is more experienced in New York State and able to provide some sort of a defense. In a case like this, because it is high profile, it is possible that he will attract more lawyers who would want to do this out of fame than out of money.
You're breaking down so much of the strategy here for us. Thank you so much, Angela. And as for how Luigi Mangione was arrested, well, it's because some people at a McDonald's hundreds of miles away recognized parts of his face from those pictures that were put out in the hours after his murder. But that did not happen for 5 days. And when police did show up to that McDonald's, apparently they didn't even have a suspect name.
His picture was out there, this video surveillance was out there, and this is somebody who had a family, friends. Frankly, some of the social media suggests friends that had been looking for him. Is this a name you saw anywhere prior to this arrest yesterday?
It is not. And we have been working this hard for 5 days and gotten hundreds of tips to our tip lines, but this was not a name that was called into us.
So this is extremely notable considering NYPD is the largest city police force in the world. They've got access to a surveillance system of up to some 40,000 security cameras. The murder happened right on the sidewalk just before 7 in the morning. Joining us now once again is Frank Figliuzzi, NBC News senior national security analyst and former assistant director for counterintelligence at the FBI. Frank, thanks so much for being with us tonight. NYPD has the suspect, but there are some things that people are asking today. Are there some lessons that they're learning from potential blind spots here in New York?
Well, the biggest blind spot I can see is with regard to facial recognition technology, which we always sing the praises of in law enforcement in terms of just an amazing ability to match a face to another known photograph. The problem is that this young man was able to defeat that technology by simply wearing a mask, partial mask, a medical mask, which really makes it hard for all of that wonderful high-tech facial recognition to have enough information to say, I've seen this picture somewhere else. So that's just technology not yet refined to the point where it's perfect. There is no perfect technology. I actually am quite impressed with the amount of work NYPD did in a compressed period of time. If it could be done, they did it. The issue is when you're kind of off the grid, as the Unabomber did. You know, the Unabomber used Greyhound buses to travel to the places where he delivered his bombs. You pay in cash. There's no record of what you did, and unless you're captured on some terminal or station camera, not in a mask, then you're good to go. You're off the grid. Here's the last thought on this is it's really difficult to catch a killer when they're a cause killer, and there's not a direct line between them and the victim, which we haven't discovered yet.
Yeah, you're talking about the ideology as motivation, and you also brought up the Unabomber. And I got to ask, I mean, you know, we've reported on some allegations that he had read the Unabomber's manifesto and that he had also written about the Unabomber. Do you think that, I don't know, Greyhound or buses and some of the MO that the Unabomber had might have been taken into consideration by this suspect?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it looks to me like he read everything he could. He read the manifesto of Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. He aligned himself with some of the ideology there, concluding in a book review he did that there are conditions where it's moral and ethical to commit a murder, particularly around corporate greed. So absolutely he would know that the Unabomber took buses, lived off the grid, no credit cards, all of that played into his planning. The part of the planning that failed, I think, was that he never really had a full escape plan. And that leads me to wonder whether he had another target in mind. You know, his mini manifesto said the parasites deserved it or had it coming. Parasites, plural. Were there more targets? Is that why he kept his gun? We need to find that out.
Frank Figliuzzi, thank you so much for breaking all this down for us tonight. And right now, a serious wildfire in California is threatening Malibu, burning nearly 3,000 acres. And they're calling this one the Franklin Fire. And it is a monster that is 0% contained right now. It is forcing thousands of evacuations and even school closures and power outages. As strong, gusty winds and dry conditions are making things even more complicated for firefighters out there. Winds as high as 93 miles an hour were reported in the mountains last night. The fire moved so fast at times, it caught so many people in that area by surprise.
The smoke was so thick, and just like everything was just orange, and then the wind picked up, and the wind was just like flying embers everywhere.
Apocalyptic images there. Students and staff at Pepperdine University even had to shelter in place for a couple of hours as the flames, the orange glow that you're seeing, that is right outside the school's library there, but the threat is not over yet. More than 12 million people across Southern California are still under fire alerts through at least tomorrow. We've got team coverage tonight. Bill Cairns is standing by with the forecast, but first let's go to NBC's Dana Griffin in Malibu. Dana, what's the latest when it comes to containing the fire? I see the glow right behind you in the hillside there.
Yeah, and Gadi, I think because the sun is going down, we're starting to see this glow become a little bit more pronounced. But things have been pretty calm for most of the day, except for this morning when those wind gusts were kicking up. I actually had to put my goggles on because the wind gusts kicked up once again. This is the most wind activity we've had for several hours. The wind is whipping. You can feel the soot getting into your eyes, which can make for a very dangerous situation. So right now, firefighters are still trying to tackle this blaze. Luckily, it's not doing that forward progression that we saw this morning when it was quadrupling within a matter of hours. But because these wind gusts have kicked up, this is the major concern, because this is what can spread embers, move them half a mile away. And this is what makes situations like this very dangerous. Gadi?
And Dina, I mean, I can hear the wind blowing on your microphone. You see the wind blowing your hair. It definitely looks like it's picking up.
Yeah.
I got to ask, Malibu, like, escaping is so difficult because you've got the PCH there, and then you've got some choke points in the canyons. Is that all under evacuation right now? Is there a potential for more of like a log jam when it comes to people trying to get in and out of that area, or are things pretty clear?
Well, we were up there just about a couple of hours ago. We've actually seen some residents return to their homes. So you may have some people that are still out there, checked into hotels, but a lot of people are returning, trying to check on the status of their homes. The concern is when you get high wind gusts like this, if a fire were to explode, like you mentioned, those canyonous areas, a fire can take off within minutes. We were at an area and we just saw a spot fire, and within minutes, the entire hillside was ablaze. These sort of fires and flames can spread very quickly because of the fuel, the dry fuel, one, and also the whipping wind. So you're right, that could create an issue. When we talked to residents that evacuated overnight, they didn't talk about any choke points or any concerns about that, but there's always a possibility. That's why firefighters say when you're told to evacuate immediately, because they usually evacuate certain areas at a time so that you don't have that issue. Gadi?
And one other thing, you know, when you're out on those fire lines, it's something that we don't talk about enough. You know, this is a potentially catastrophic fire. Would have absolutely been a catastrophic fire if it wasn't for LA County Fire Department and some of those air operations that we keep showing there. What have you seen on the front lines when it comes to those airdrops and when it comes to the firefighters on the front lines?
Yeah, it's been spectacular. We have seen helicopters picking up load after load of water from Pepperdine University. They got a little duck pond right outside their campus, or right outside the entrance of their campus. It's actually their property. We've been seeing several water drops. We've seen flame retardant drops. So they are really attacking this fire from the air, giving it all they've got. So they're making some great progress. But again, with these winds, anything could happen within a matter of moments. So I'm curious to see what conditions are like for them, because these are the conditions that make it really, really hard for firefighters. So, Gadi, hopefully we can check in with them and get an update.
It's such a heroic effort out there. Dana, thanks for highlighting it for us. Yeah. And let's bring Bill Cairns in. Bill, what's the situation looking like over the next 24 hours?
Yeah, we're going to watch the winds dying down slowly overnight. By the time the sun comes up, we should be over with this big wind threat. Obviously, the relative humidity is still low, so any fires that do start still can burn pretty quickly, but we won't have that, like, particularly dangerous situation. So here's what we were watching all day long today. It was the fire moving away from the real populated areas. So last night, this is Pepperdine University here. On the east side is where you saw those incredible pictures with the flames in the middle of the night and the students all huddled up together in the campus center. And we even had, you know, at one point, we actually got a thing saying that the fire was burning down towards the pier. And we're like, oh, the pier? The pier's out here in the water. How's the fire down by the pier? But yeah, that was kind of spotty down here. But it was amazing we didn't lose more houses. The firefighters just did an incredible job of protecting so many structures. Now the fire is burning more through, as you can see, the mountainous areas here and heading in a general eastward direction, kind of against the wind. And that's why we didn't really see this crazy spread of fire today, because the wind was kind of going out to the sea, so the fire couldn't move in that general direction. The high winded warning has been dropped. We still have some wind advisories out there. It's mostly for those favored canyon and passes that always have the high winds, and that's where we could get some peak gusts tonight in the 20 to 30 mile per range. But this is way down. Like last night, it was like double this. So we still have a chance if any new fires do form, they still could spread pretty quickly, and so we still have red flag warnings that are up for numerous areas here, Gadi.
And Bill, this is the second time in the last month that we've seen that elevated red flag risk, and then both times it's resulted in a pretty catastrophic fire. Is that going to become the new norm here?
I can't answer yes or no because we have to wait and see how time goes. So what happened is the National Weather Service issues what they call red flag warnings, but they also can take it one level higher and call it a particularly dangerous situation red flag warning. That's when you have extremely low relative humidities, like 5%, and you also have the really high winds. They say that happens on average every 3 to 5 years, Gadi. This is now the second time, as you mentioned, in the last 2-3 months. So just statistically, this shouldn't happen again for another 6 to 8 years.
Wow.
We'll see.
Meanwhile, out here in the East Coast, it is very muggy, very rainy outside. How long is this going to last?
Yeah, so this is needed because we have the drought situation in the east, but there's snow and then heavy rain. This is an atmospheric river, the East Coast version. And so for that reason, we're going to have a lot of problems with water and travel and with wind. So the airports tomorrow afternoon and evening are going to be a disaster. I mean, it's going to be 60-mile-per-hour winds, torrential rain. We're going to have a lot of flights canceled, a ton of delays as we go. High wind warnings haven't happened in a while here. This will be one of the highest wind events for coastal areas of southern New England and Maine that we've had all year. So up to 50 to 60-mile-per-hour winds, and so that's going to be an issue with the winds. The rainfall is going to be another 2 to 3 inches of rain. Areas that have snow, we're going to worry about river flooding in areas like New Hampshire and Vermont, too.
Wow. Bill Cairns, thank you. And turning now to a strange mix of hope and anxiety in Syria tonight. With the Assad government gone, the question now is who is going to fill that power vacuum? Assad has left the country for Moscow. Today, Russia's deputy foreign minister confirmed that exclusively to NBC News.
President Assad is in Russia. He is secured, and it shows that Russia acts as required in such an extraordinary situation.
Meanwhile, in Syria, the rebel group that overthrew the Assad regime has now formed an interim government, confirming the appointment of a new prime minister. But all this is happening as Israel attacked Syria overnight, with explosions rocking the capital city of Damascus. Officials there are saying they think the Syrian revolution could replace one enemy with another. A lot to unpack there, and NBC's Matt Bradley has it all.
Yeah, Gadi, a couple days of very fast-moving events, and the pace here in Syria has not let up. We just heard today that the Israelis have been shelling positions throughout western Syria, including, according to the Israelis, heavy munitions like chemical weapons and long-range missile sites. They've also moved into a buffer zone that was established in 1974 between the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights and Syria proper. We've also heard that the Israelis have actually moved beyond that buffer zone and have taken up positions in Syria proper. We've been hearing some varied explanations from the Israelis about this. Some have been saying that this is because they're trying to prevent an October 7th style attack from Syria amidst all of this chaos, and they're trying to neutralize some of the former Assad regime's heavy weapons, very deadly weapons, in order to keep them from falling into the wrong hands. Now, obviously, this has attracted a lot of criticism from throughout the world, including here in the Middle East. A lot of folks are saying that this looks like a land grab. Now, this comes amidst all of the euphoria that we're seeing in Damascus. Behind me, we're still hearing people shooting into the air in celebration. But on the road up here to Damascus from Beirut, we passed hundreds of people who were actually trying to flee this country in the wake of the fall of the Assad regime. I spoke with one family who said that they were from Aleppo. They said that they're Shiite Muslims, unlike the current regime, which just took power. They are Islamist Sunnis who historically have given a lot of trouble to the Shiite minority, especially here in Syria and in neighboring Lebanon. So they told me that they're worried, not necessarily about this new regime, but about people in Syria, their friends and neighbors, their community, that they could turn against them. And I also spoke with a bunch of soldiers. They said that when they heard about the fall of Bashar al-Assad, they threw off their uniforms and they raced to the border to try to flee. They were fighting in Bashar al-Assad's military. They said they were trying to cross the border into Lebanon without even their identity cards or their passports. Here's what they told me.
من الطائفية اللي بسوريا ممكن يصير من القصة طائفية ممكن يصير في حرب أهلية وأنا عندي عيال فأنا طبيعي خاف عليهم يعني بهذا العمر.
So he's coming from Aleppo, and he says that he's actually leaving because they're Shia and they're afraid of the sectarian nature of this new regime.
تمام وصاروا يبعثوا تهديدات فلان بدنا نقتله فلان بدنا نذبحه بدنا نغتصب عرضه اما هيئه احرار الشام ولا واحد فيهم حكانا بالعكس بكل احترام وما قارشونا
بس انت يعني الجندي انت كنت جندي كمان مثله نعم. All three of these guys were former soldiers, and they're fleeing now because they say they're not afraid of this new regime necessarily taking revenge on them. They're afraid of ordinary people taking revenge on them. So as you can see, Gadi, there's a real thread running through a lot of these experiences. It's not necessarily that people are afraid of this new regime and its leader, who, while an Islamist, has been making a lot of the right noises. And we've even heard that from the White House, that he's been talking the talk. But the question is, for the international community, will he walk the walk in terms of liberalism, in terms of women's rights, in terms of allowing freedoms for ethnic and religious minorities? That is the big question here. But for these folks who are fleeing from Syria, for them, the question isn't the regime. It's about their friends and neighbors and whether or not they'll be welcome in this new Syria.
Important questions, Matt Bradley. Thank you. And remember a few years ago when there was a flood of leaks from the Trump White House when he first took office? Okay, yeah, that was a long time ago. So if you need a quick refresher, it dominated Trump's Twitter feed for ages, and almost every time it would happen, Trump would vow to track down how the info was getting out. Case in point.
We're going to find the leakers. We're going to find the leakers. They're going to pay a big price for leaking.
Well, tonight, a new report from the Justice Department's top watchdog reveals just how the Trump administration was trying to do that. It turns out in 2017 and 2018, the DOJ secretly obtained phone and text message logs of dozens of congressional staffers as well as 2 members of Congress. Let's bring in NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney. And Ken, can you break this down for us? How did the DOJ get these records? How are we now finding out who was targeted? And is this legal?
It was legal, Gadi. It was a garden variety criminal leak investigation started by career prosecutors. And one of the findings of the Inspector General today was that he couldn't establish that there was any political motive. Now, could he say whether these prosecutors were motivated by Donald Trump's public comments to find the leakers? Of course, he couldn't say that. But nonetheless, they launched this investigation. They issued a string of subpoenas to places like Apple and Verizon to grab up the phone logs and text message logs of 43 congressional staffers, about half Republicans and half Democrats, and 2 members of Congress, Democrat Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell. They were on the Intelligence Committee. They were reviewing classified information. This was a leak of classified information to the New York Times and the Washington Post and other places. So one of the issues this report raised was there's a separation of powers issue when you have the Justice Department rooting around in the phone records of congressional staffers simply because they were looking at classified information as part of their jobs. That was the only reason. There was no other reason to suspect them of leaking. And so fast forward, there were no charges filed. And then in 2020, Bill Barr is the Attorney General, and he supercharges this investigation, and he approves new subpoenas to some of the journalists who wrote the stories, secretly grabbing up their phone records and text logs. And by the way, these subpoenas come with a gag order. So Apple or whoever is not allowed to tell the target that the DOJ has their records. And so in terms of the journalists, the Justice Department Inspector General found that actually violated guidelines that were in place back then. Barr should have consulted an outside committee. He didn't. As of right now, Gadi, there are rules in place that would not allow the DOJ to do that except in emergency circumstances, subpoenaing the records of journalists. but they are just simply rules that could be repealed on day one of a Trump administration. Got it.
And Ken, some technical questions here. We've been talking a lot about like encrypted text messaging and who you can text where, you know, that text message stays encrypted. But when we're talking about these phone records, are we talking about just like this phone number called this phone number, or they sent a text message or 5 text messages to this phone number? Are we talking about like the actual, like they have everything? They have the full text messages, everything that was exchanged, and possibly some call logs?
No, they did not get the content. That's an important distinction. That would have required another level of probable cause. What they got was what's called the metadata, the logs, which shows who people communicated, who called who was texting with whom. And, you know, when you're a journalist, that actually tells the prosecutor a lot, right? It tells them who you're talking to, potentially who your sources are, or if, in the case of a congressional staffer, it could tell them that a whistleblower from the Justice Department was secretly calling the Judiciary Committee. So that raises a lot of questions. That's why most experts and many lawmakers believe there need to be guardrails in place before the DOJ secretly grabs up these kinds of records without even giving the target a chance to challenge it in court, Gadi.
And that's why you and I should always talk on Snapchat, I guess. Ken Delaney.
Absolutely. Or Signal.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you so much. And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Up next, we are diving deep into the drone mystery happening in the skies above New Jersey. An FBI official saying point blank today, they have no idea what's going on. The mayor of one of those towns dealing with this is going to join us live, so stay tuned for that. Plus, Amazon is sending up drones too. Finally, their package delivery program getting off the ground in Phoenix. Why the goal isn't to replace trucks, but to help them out. And later this hour, Character.AI is under the microscope again, a family claiming it encouraged self-harm and the growing concerns about companion chatbots and the future of everything. Hey, welcome back, and here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. Cincinnati Bengals star quarterback Joe Burrow is the latest pro athlete to have his home broken into. Now, cops say this happened sometime between Sunday afternoon and Monday night when he was playing against the Cowboys on national television, and police say a woman who works for Burrow found a bedroom window shattered and the room ransacked. And former Abercrombie & Fitch boss Mike Jeffries wants a court hearing to see if he is mentally fit to stand trial. He's facing federal sex trafficking charges. The judge says Jeffries has until February to submit a doctor's report evaluating how competent he is. Jeffries pleaded not guilty a few months ago and is free on a $10 million bond. And consider this, I don't know, a friendly reminder to leave your weapons of war at home. TSA agents say they found a grenade inside of carry-on at LaGuardia Airport yesterday, but it turns out it had been hollowed out so it does not explode. And the TSA explosives experts say they will now use it as a training tool, and the person who had it was not arrested and allowed to board. And today was the second day of the hearing for the Onion's bid on InfoWars. A bankruptcy judge in Texas is reviewing the November auction, and a trustee who oversaw the auction testified that only 2 people showed up, and the Onion simply had the better bid. And rival grocery chains Kroger and Albertsons plan on merging. Well, actually, they're not planning on merging any longer because a judge in Oregon blocked Kroger's $25 billion bid. They were concerned that the deal could take away competition between the grocery stores. If the deal would have gone through, Kroger would have owned 5,000 stores across the United States. Tonight, a whole bunch of people are trying to figure out what is happening in New Jersey. By now, you've probably seen some of these bizarre and mysterious drone videos from New Jersey. And night after night, people are going outside and they're seeing weird stuff. Are they planes? Are they drones? Are they some sort of something else? Well, no one seems to know, and now there is a lot of pressure building on officials to figure it out.
In the skies above the east, reports of mysterious drones.
Look, guys, there's one there, one there, one there.
Turning into thousands of posts going viral online.
Coming in one after one.
With people from coast to coast now spending a lot more time looking up and pointing their cameras into the night.
This is bizarre. There's more over there, look.
Some could be optical illusions, planes that seem closer than they are.
You can hear that one. That is definitely a plane.
But others have defied normal explanation.
What the f***?
Car-sized drones operating for hours in restricted airspace and able to elude local law enforcement when they send their own drones up to give chase. In New Jersey, the Army reporting the Picatinny Arsenal has had 11 unauthorized drone incursions in the last month.
Look what's back again. Same spot as last night.
21 local mayors now demanding answers from the state.
The minute you get eyes on them, they go dark. This is something we're taking deadly seriously.
The entire month before that, it was nightly drone incursions over Langley Air Force Base.
Let's just start with current events.
Today, a congressional hearing on Capitol Hill on the national security threat drones pose.
What is going on in New Jersey?
We're investigating, but I don't have an answer of who's responsible for that, of one or more people that are responsible for those drone flights.
But for those who see them on a nightly basis...
Not a plane. That is a drone in the airspace.
The drones are a very real reminder.
Almost hear a little bit of a hum.
That our airspace...
It's a very little thermal signature.
...is not as secure as we might hope.
All right, so there's a big difference between me going outside or someone else going outside that doesn't really have training and looking up, and those cops that went outside and were looking up, and then a mayor of Mine Hill Township, Sam Morris, who went outside as well, and he saw something weird. Mayor Morris, thanks so much for being with us. Can you walk us through exactly what you've seen in your skies and what's being done about it?
Sure. You know, of course, I was aware of this issue, but last Tuesday night it kind of came full force into my life with a resident who I know well, lives a block from me, reported to me that there were 8 drones over our school and municipal complex, which are on the same block. So I got in my car and I went around there. And by the time I got around here, they were not overhead anymore. So I went into, there's a field behind our town hall that has a lot less light pollution. It's a park. And when I went in there, I could see a series of, it was like a stationary drone. It was sitting still and 3 drones going back and forth in a north-south pattern. They would go to the north a certain distance, stop, and turn back around, almost like somebody farming a field or, you know, something like that. And that's what really got me a little hyper-focused on all this because I saw it personally and videoed it personally.
So you saw it. Were you able to kind of track them? How big did they look? How fast were they moving? Any details there?
Well, they aren't, you know, when they're doing whatever they're doing, they aren't really moving particularly fast. They're, you know, I can't estimate speed, but they're not like, oh man, that was rocketing across the sky. They're going very methodically with a plan. And you can see that. You can see that they aren't just whizzing around, you know. There are people that have drones and they just fly willy-nilly, so to speak. These are very methodical in their flight path, and it looks very planned.
It looks very planned, and, you know, in certain places it is very illegal, especially Picatinny Arsenal is very close to you. You've got Bedminster also out there in New Jersey. Yep. There are TFRs. Some of them are over airports, just hovering there. You'd think that if, like, it's illegal and someone is breaking the law, the cops or some authority would be able to go out there and very quickly figure out who's doing this. Has that been the case at all?
No, there's a lot of rules on that, but I got to be honest, we got to be a little bit, after watching Robert Wheeler's testimony today, I'm kind of fed up, and I'm part of that group of mayors that authored a pair of letters on Sunday trying to bring more focus to this, and we did. I genuinely think it's time to start harvesting drones and stop worrying about the rules. Whoever's running these drones, they're not worrying about the rules. They're using the rules against us, and that's always, you know, it happens in a civilized society. But whatever they're doing, they don't care what the rules are. They're 11 drones. It's been admitted now. 11 drones have gone over Picatinny Arsenal, which is about 5 miles from here in a direct line. Those drones should have been blown out of the sky. Why are we putting up with this? Why are we putting up with this?
You're not talking about like the TFR temporary flight restriction rules. You're talking about literally just blasting them out of the sky.
They have Picatinny Arsenal is a weapons development center. Okay, it's a high-tech place. It's in a rural area, it's beautiful, but it's a high-tech place. If you're the bad guys, you want to know what's going on at Picatinny. They went into Picatinny's airspace. That's a violation of the law. It has to be. You know, I don't have the chapter and verse of the U.S. Code, but if I did that and they came back and tracked that I put a drone over, or an average person, somebody put a drone over, we'd be in big federal trouble. I don't know why they even put up with letting them go over like that. And then my understanding, Langley and then several other bases in New Jersey, they're doing that. What I don't really understand is the testimony from the FBI today. He said, well, the FAA has rules about what we can do and how we can engage these drones. Well, what is the FAA going to come and arrest the FBI if they take care of the little business? I mean, give me a break. These things can be brought down, and I've been saying this all week. These drones have a battery life. They have to come back to the Earth at some point, and somebody's controlling them. Just follow them to where they're going. Now, I know they're saying, oh, they go dark. Well, we have high tech. We have night vision. We have tracking devices. We can track onto one of these drones in a helicopter and follow it anywhere it goes. Even if it goes dark, you can follow it. So we have extreme technology in our military. They need to go do that. We need to get to the bottom of this, because what my residents are reporting to me, and all the other mayors in all the other counties in Jersey are reporting to them, they don't feel comfortable or safe with people over their head who are not regulated. Everybody knows a plane's going to go by, everything like that. But this has gotten ridiculous. And this testimony today was horrible, horrible.
And Mr. Mayor, one question. Is there a chance that this is something from Picatinny or something that the U.S. military is testing that they may not want to share? Or have you been assured,
well,
no,
sure,
that's not the
right?
case?
The guy in my position doesn't know any of that. And unfortunately, residents think, because you're the mayor, you know everything, right? Oh, you really know. You really don't. We're really befuddled. But I can tell you, Picatinny's close enough to hear that a lot of people... Picatinny, they've been going around Picatinny looking. That was for one of the first instincts was, they're coming out of Picatinny and going back in there. And people then have said, I went and sat near Picatinny at night. I sat in the park near there. I sat on the road near there. There's no activity. These drones pop out around 5:30 and they go till 11 or midnight. They're not hiding themselves. They're out when people are out, and they're not around that military base in a volume, that anybody's picked up on.
Yeah, the lights on those drones continues to just baffle my mind. If you're being, nefarious, why would you have lights, or you're trying to spy? You have red and green lights that are just very.
If I could share with you, there was one in Mine Hill that I think it was Sunday. I think it was Thursday night of last week. A lady called me about it. It was just sitting. I don't know how far, but let's go with a quarter mile from my house. And I videoed it, but it came out grainy. But I watched it with my own eyes. Red, green, red, green, red, green. And it was sitting perfectly still. No plane. And it was, 200-300 feet up. And it just sat there. We don't know what it was doing, but it just sat there. So this is definitely by plan. It's just a matter of whose plan. And I think we need to get our hands on a few. And if they need to get a court order to do it, the FBI needs to go get a court order to do it. But enough of this. There's enough of this for everybody.
Mayor, thank you so much for joining us. Speaking
Thank you
the
for having
truth
me.
that a lot of people want to hear. Mayor, thanks.
Appreciate it.
And you know how every year you check your Amazon app to see delivery updates to make sure that all your gifts are getting there before Christmas? Well, this year, if you're in Arizona, instead of checking the app, you might want to just look up into the sky. CNBC's Kate Rooney has more on how drones are revolutionizing Amazon's delivery.
Amazon first touted this futuristic drone idea a decade ago. In 2024, it's now becoming a reality. Amazon's now officially using drones to deliver packages here in Phoenix, and says it plans to roll out to other major cities next year. These aircrafts are meant for relatively small items, things that fit in a shoebox and weigh 5 pounds or less. The example we saw here was a Jenga game. You pay about $10 extra to choose drone delivery and need to confirm where you want it dropped on a map of your property. Amazon uses sensors to detect objects on the ground and in the air to make sure it's safe to drop the package from about 12 feet. Amazon executive David Carbon joined after spending nearly 2 decades at Boeing. They've made design changes over the years, and one change was noise. He said the newest version was 40% quieter with a different sound.
You can have kids in your house and they're laughing and carrying on, and it brings a smile to your face. Then you can have a whining kid in your house. You just shut the door. You don't want to hear it, right? It's the same level of noise. If you think about the noise level, it's probably the same level, but it has a different feeling to it. So the feeling of this drone is a lot quieter, a lot, I wouldn't say soothing, but it's like it's muted.
Carbon says navigating airspace has been the biggest hurdle. Amazon got FAA approval for its MK-30 drones in October.
We're not going to be the only ones that want to be in the air. And, you know, you've got your traditional folks that are in the air, and we're going to have to, you know, we're going to need the regulator to come up with rules that ensure, you know, we're not blocking airspace to any one participant.
The Arizona site is integrated directly with a same-day fulfillment center, which helps these packages get out the door to the drones quickly. Inside the warehouse, they pack these boxes with more of a buffer to absorb the shock of being dropped from a drone. Amazon's goal is 500 million deliveries a year within 30 minutes or less. So far, they have done thousands of drone deliveries like the one behind me. But there is competition. Others like Google and Walmart are successfully rolling out similar drone programs. Kate Rooney for CNBC Business News in Phoenix.
2024, y'all. Kate, thank you. Still ahead tonight, much more on the chaos in Syria. Our Richard Engel is on the ground as people search for the countless loved ones who have been imprisoned there for years. That's coming up next. Hey, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. Israel's foreign minister saying he is more optimistic about a potential hostage deal. He said during a press conference that indirect talks with Hamas are happening right now, and the foreign minister once again made it clear that there won't be a ceasefire unless there is a hostage deal. About 100 people are still believed to be held by Hamas. Meanwhile, in an underground fortified courtroom in Tel Aviv, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu took the stand in his corruption trial. He's accused of fraud, bribery, and breach of trust. Netanyahu called the allegations absurd, arguing his dedication as the leader and the bias of the legal system is against him. Now, this won't be the only time he's on the stand. He's expected to testify also 3 days a week for the next several weeks. And over in Georgia, demonstrators and police clashing in the streets. Fireworks were set off in response to police tear gas. This ties back to a decision by the government last month to pause talks and join the EU. At least 300 arrests have been made in over nearly 2 weeks of protest plagued that country. And in Brazil, President Lula is recovering after emergency brain surgery. An MRI taken on Monday revealed a brain bleed, and this 79-year-old fell in his home earlier this year. Doctors say the bleed is connected to that accident. We're told the surgery did not affect his brain function, and he's expected to stay in the ICU for a few more days. And more now on the chaos in Syria. Families and friends of those who went missing under the brutal Assad regime are now searching for answers. NBC's Richard Engel has a look inside one prison near Damascus where many of Assad's political opponents are imprisoned.
Thousands of Syrians today came to the Saydnaya prison outside Damascus to search for missing relatives. This is where the brutal regime of dictator Bashar al-Assad sent those who dared oppose him to disappear. A man held handfuls of nooses he found made of cheap nylon cord. Some were freshly used and still bloody. What did we do to deserve this, he asked. Amnesty International dubbed Saydnaya a human slaughterhouse. And now that Assad is gone, Syrians and the world can see the cruelty of his regime.
They're describing this as a human press, a torture device that prisoners like this man is demonstrating here would be put on this slab and then crushed in order to torture them.
In another torture room, Amal showed me a photo of her son Milad, missing for more than 10 years. He was sentenced for being a militant. My son was a nurse, she says. The squalid cells are now empty, broken open by the rebels Monday when hundreds of prisoners were freed. But families believe, or want to believe, their relatives may still be hidden in here. They broke holes in the walls, searching for secret rooms and basements. They didn't find any. Instead, they found paperwork.
All over here, there are documents. It seems like this place was abandoned in a hurry. And if you come in here, you can see with flashlights, everyone is just searching for any evidence that their loved ones may have been here, may have been executed here.
This woman says her son was taken here in 2013 and never seen again. I'm looking for evidence to give me hope he's still alive, she says. On their hands and knees, Syrians today searched for signs of life, poring over logbooks and records. So many names, so many tragedies. Syria's blackest site finally exposed.
A Syrian human rights group says that most of this country's 100,000 missing prisoners are likely dead.
Richard Engel, thank you for that report. Before we go, it is time for the future of everything. The next phase of OpenAI is here. A look at some videos created just from text. But does Sora miss the mark big picture? And tonight in the future of everything, there's a new 4-letter AI word that we might need to start getting used to a lot more. Introducing or reintroducing Sora. That is the latest AI tool from the same company that brought us ChatGPT, hyped a bunch earlier this year and now finally released into the wild. And unlike its ChatGPT or DALL-E brother and sister, Sora is all about generating video. She's kind of like the content creator of the family. And it works like this. You type out something you want to see and Sora shoots out a high-definition video clip. When it comes to some of the abstract art stuff, she is pretty great. Stop motion, animation, cartoons, she can usually nail it. So much so that here's a trailer for a sci-fi film called Bloomchild that was made using Sora about a kid made of soil who has the power to bloom flowers. You see it right there. But when it comes to the physics of real-world stuff, how things are supposed to move around in gravity, that is a Sora post on TikTok of a gymnast. It's either definitely going to win the next Olympics or needs a chiropractor stat. Let's bring in Shanae Bovell, a futurist and founder of Way. Shanae, some mixed reviews when it comes to people using Sora on a daily basis now. I think I'm quoting you here, but I think you've said this is the worst we're ever going to see it. It's only going to get exponentially better going forward. What are the big ramifications, the societal ramifications that we need to be on the lookout for?
Yeah, and I would reiterate that. This is the worst artificial intelligence will ever be. So whatever the reviews are, they're only going to improve going forward. I think why this moment is really big in particular. Over 200 million people use ChatGPT every single week. So all of those people now have access to this AI video generator. So in terms of our touch of reality, what is real, what is fake, video is now going to be deployed into that mix at a scale we haven't seen before.
And when it comes to social media, I mean, we've got these incentive structures where it's like, hey, you post something that gets a lot of clicks and you can monetize it. And then you've got a tool like this, you add that into the equation. Like, where do you see this going with misinformation?
Yeah, so in terms of misinformation, disinformation, I mean, the quality is quite good. As you said, when it comes to physics and objects, it can sometimes look a little bit unnatural. But in terms of being able to differentiate what is real, what is fake, it's not going to be realistic to expect the average person to do that. I mean, there's a reason why the Department of Defense recently invested in a company that does AI detection tools and so forth. But that's going to be a cat-mouse game. And so this moment really does call into question the value proposition of the internet. If, for example, Google's mission is to sort the world's information, make it useful, make it accessible, Meta's value proposition to connect people and to build community, well, how do you do that in a world where most of the internet might be AI generated? Is it going to be what it's always been, or are we looking at what needs to evolve from here on in?
It sounds like we need metal detectors to figure out what is signal and what is noise.
Yeah, it's going to be a holistic approach from AI detection tools to things like media provenance. So being able to detect and track information or content throughout the internet, that is possible, but it would require all hands on deck throughout the globe, all platforms to do that. AI literacy, but even then, the tools are going to keep expanding, keep progressing. So we're going to have to keep changing our game as we go forward.
Got it. Shanae Bovell, this is a scary time. We really appreciate you coming in to illuminate all this for us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And finally, a new lawsuit speaking to some of the worst fears about AI. Parents saying that Character.AI encouraged their child to hurt themselves or to get violent. And we've talked about this chatbot before when the Florida family blamed it on their son's suicide. And tonight, NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett is putting that app to the test. Take a look.
A clear and present danger to American youth. That's the blistering claim against a popular chatbot service, Character.AI, now sued over disturbing content that parents say artificial intelligence pushes to children and teens. At the heart of the case, a feature on the app that allows users to chat with seemingly human-like characters known as companion chatbots. But according to the lawsuit, a bot coaxed a previously happy teenage boy into engaging in self-harm by cutting himself. The bot telling him, quote, "It felt good," and appearing to sympathize with the teen's complaints. His parents had limited screen time, allegedly writing, "I'm not surprised when I read the news and see stuff like child kills parents after a decade of physical and emotional abuse." Lawyers for the parents say this isn't a design flaw, but the direct result of underlying design choices.
What we see is that it sends these kids down these terrible rabbit holes.
I tried out the app myself. I decided to go with a Roman playwright, and I asked him, "Are you real?" All right, we're chatting, and he says, "Of course I am real, you dolt." Google, also named in the lawsuit for its direct investment in Character.AI, distanced itself from the app, saying the two are completely separate, unrelated companies, and Google has never had a role in designing or managing their AI model or technologies. Character.AI declined to comment on the lawsuit, but pushed back on the claim that the company has failed to establish safeguards for teens, saying, "We are introducing new safety features for users under 18 in addition to the tools already in place." Before you can even sign into the app, a birthday is required. But lawyers for the parents say that's not enough, as it does nothing to verify user ages. Laura Jarrett, NBC News.
Oh, Laura Jarrett, thank you. And that's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.